Have you ever wanted to get a new phone for significantly less? Well, let me point you in the direction of Swappa. This website is one of the coolest things I've ever seen, specifically because everything on here is really cheap. And whenever I've bought something here, it's actually been quite usable. So let's look for an iPhone 14 Pro Max from like 3 years ago. We can go unlocked so that you can use it on your carrier. It doesn't matter what your carrier is. I know you'll be able to use this on your carrier. Okay, then we're gonna go 256 gigabytes because who wants a 128 gigabyte Pro Max iPhone? That's ridiculous. Okay, and so then we're going to look at the prices. Whoa, these are a little bit lower than what you would get on the refurbished part of Apple's website. I mean, my goodness. Well, okay, the battery health isn't exactly great. It's like 83 and 76 in some cases. But let's look at this one from David in Somerville, South Carolina. He takes PayPal for payment. That's nice, that's very convenient. And then there's shipping, which is free shipping, and then there's LZLU 59675. That's his code. Okay, and then we go into pictures, LZLU 59675. Okay, that means this is a real listing from a real person. Because getting that piece of paper with that code in there is literally one of the most important things for making sure that a website or a listing on this site anyway is legit. So that's a very important thing. So that's really great. All right, so let's see. It's running a pretty recent version of iOS. That's good. And it's an iPhone 14 Pro Max with 256 gigabytes. So he's showing that this absolutely is the device that he says it is. Because sometimes what people will try to do is they'll try to sell a Pro for the price of a Pro Max. And they typically won't show this exact screen with the actual, model name and everything about that. And you can also see the capacity is as advertised, because you could also mark up a 128 gigabyte device as 256 and sell it for a bit more, and then the buyer would be really disappointed to find out, no, sorry, you actually have like half the storage that you wanted. That'd be a very bad seller practice, which he is not engaging with here, which is great to see. Okay, then there's, this is our first potential red flag. Parts and service history. That means that there's something about this device that is not entirely original. It's the screen. Now, in some cases, an aftermarket screen disables Face ID. For many newer iPhones, so like the 13 and newer, Apple has a software pairing system that links the Face ID components to the device's logic board through the original display's sensors. Replacing the screen with a third-party one without this pairing process will cause Face ID to malfunction. There's no other way to authenticate on an iPhone other than Face ID. So an aftermarket display is quite literally the most inconvenient thing ever to deal with if you use Face ID, which most of us do. Okay, so our repair record says that the display is what was replaced. But the status says that it's genuine, which means this was replaced with a real Apple display. So Face ID does still work here. It was replaced June 18, 2024, so sometime last year. Okay. So this display is just as good as new. There are no problems. And the battery appears to be original, which is in this case actually kind of a downside because it's only at 83% of its original health, which means you're not going to get a very good battery life out of this. It's 17% smaller than it was when it was new, if that helps you. Okay, now if you end your day with your phone having at least 20% still left in the tank, then you'll be fine. But okay, then the Mint Mobile ad. But yeah, so this should be actually a pretty much okay device. Maximum capacity, 83%, okay. Optimized battery charging has been turned on, but I don't know that that means anything because, we don't know that he's been charging it that way. And you know what? This kind of lets him off the hook. It doesn't matter if he has or if he hasn't, because the thing that destroys these lithium-ion batteries the fastest is going to 100% regardless of how long they spend there. So the main problem is that this is an iPhone 14 or earlier. Because the iPhone 14 and earlier don't have the iPhone 15 and later's feature of limiting charge to 80%, 85%, 90%, or 95%. They just don't have it at all. It's not there. And so your only choice is to go to 100% on a battery that it'll degrade to 80% of its original capacity in only 500 charge cycles. So that's like 500 versus 1,000, twice as many on the iPhone 15 and newer. This one is still north of 80, which is pretty good to see. If I was upgrading from an old iPhone SE that maybe has 60% battery health and I upgraded to this device with 83% battery health, I'd actually be pretty happy because this would be fine. This would have appreciably better battery life than that. I mean, iPhone SE has terrible battery life anyway because the battery is just so tiny. This is our first good look at the display. What do we notice? We notice the display itself is immaculate. It's just absolutely pristine. There are no scratches. But if we look at the frame, there are a whole bunch of nicks and, damage. Again, the display is basically pristine. What happened? Well, this device is looking exactly like what its previous owner, or what its current owner says it is, which is they replaced the screen. The screen is a separate assembly from the frame, and so the frame is still really scratched, which is evidence of the big fall that shattered the original screen, or the big damage, or whatever happened that shattered the original screen and made them have to replace it in order to keep using the phone normally. Okay, so then we get another good look at the screen, and again, the screen looks pretty darn free of scratches. It's pretty good looking. Like, I would buy this if I were using a much older phone. I'm shooting this on an iPhone 15 Plus. I don't think I need a Pro Max, especially not a Pro Max that's this old, because the iPhone Pluses have remarkably good battery life for similarly low price tags to this, honestly. But let's keep looking. Okay, so the back is really in good shape. Like, there's no cracks, and matte finishes tend to hide scratches. So matte back glass pretty much always just looks incredible. The charging port doesn't look overly damaged from what we can tell. There's a bunch of gunk in the speaker grill, like these sound holes here, and I'm not sure I love that, but I'm sure that would be, cleanable. The holes aren't very deep, and they have a metal mesh over them, so it's probably possible to get them pretty darn clean with literally a toothbrush. Like, you could probably use a toothbrush to clean that, and it would end up being fine. There's a lot of dust on that camera right there, the one that's closest to us, but it doesn't look like there are any cracks, and cracks are the really big thing that make cameras not work very well for obvious reasons. Here's another sharper picture of the cameras, and everything looks fine. They look pretty dusty, but they're not like damaged per se. And then we've got our screen edge, which it doesn't look like it's lifting up too much from the rest of the body. That could be a cause for concern there. That doesn't look especially well bonded, but then that's kind of just what happens when you have anything replaced after having had to open up your phone. Your phone pretty much is never going to be that waterproof again after it's opened. Even if your phone isn't waterproof, it'll probably still be fine if you're using it in the rain, because it's not like a complete submersion. It's not like there's all this pressure from being underwater trying to get into the phone. Yeah, this actually should be a really good buy. Although, a device from Apple's refurbished website, or the refurbished part of Apple's website, is generally going to be absolutely stellar, top-notch quality, but it's also only going to be a little bit cheaper. But still, $428? Are you kidding me? Like, let's put this in the cart. Okay, the iPhone 16 Pro Max that I've been looking at buying is like $800, which is the price of the base iPhone 17. So I think that would actually be just fine. But the 14 Pro Max, just 2 years older than this 16 Pro Max, is slightly over half the price. And it also has a 48 megapixel camera. It also has a somewhat capable telephoto lens. It also has an ultra wide that can move, so you can take macro shots. That ultra wide is only 12 megapixels, but still, that's looking like the place to be right there. That's really good. Carrier compatibility is just unlocked, and there's noticeable wear and tear. Power cord and charger are not required, so he's probably not going to send you a charger and a cable, which is pretty normal. I mean, Apple doesn't do that either. So yeah, they send you a cable, but it's not a very good cable in terms of USB transfer speed. Okay, battery health is 83%, so that's good condition. Screen shows not scratches. They could have written that a little bit better. Let's see, sides/edges show scuffs. Backside looks good. Everything fully functions on the phone. Face ID, camera front and back, all buttons. And then no issues found. Okay, so that's good. Service history shows genuine display replacement. Selling the phone only, no accessories. Phone will be fully charged and reset prior to mailing. My apologies for any delay in answering questions. In my history of selling, those that ask questions rarely buy. So he's explaining why he doesn't necessarily need to answer your questions. Also, price is firm at this time. I will occasionally lower price every couple days. I like that. Someone who's a man of his word. yeah, I think that this phone would be a pretty great thing to buy. So I would say you should probably buy for this person. If you want to see more content like this, you can like and subscribe and comment, and I hope you learned something. Specifically, you do not have to spend as much money as they tell you you have to in order to get a top-of-the-line phone that's, new-ish. There are notes from the editor. I was just going to say that this listing is probably not going to be here forever because it's a considerably lower price than the other ones are, but there are still going to be a lot of good deals on this website, so I think you should come back to Swappa for more because honestly, you just don't see a Pro Max that recent that's also that low of a price. Bye now.